welcome to the Nerd Ledger. How's it going? Listen, we got some things to talk about. All right. Hello, it's me. I'm Kaje. No chair today. I'm just recording because I got some things I need to talk about. Number one, we got some follow up on all the Warner Brothers saga drama, but also, Kathleen Kennedy has had kind of an exit interview from Lucasfilm, so we'll talk about that a little bit, and The Beauty, right? So, new television show, The Beauty, based off of Image Comics series that started in like 2015-ish. And I only watched the first episode, but I have some thoughts because I obviously I read some of it back in when it came out, the comic book series, and I thought it was a very interesting concept idea, and so I read the first 6 or 7 issues back then, and then since then I've read probably 15ish of the 30 or so issues of it, and so I had certain expectations, which is always dangerous when you go into any kind of adaptation with expectations. But the expectations stem from the concept, and so I'll talk about that a little bit when we get there. But I'll start with Kathleen Kennedy first because she had a couple things to say on her departure from Lucasfilm and things like that. So first, when she talks about passing the torch, she said, 2 years ago I went to Bob and Alan to figure out what the transition plan would be, and I made the recommendation that it be Dave Filoni and Lin-Wen Brennan, the latter of whom has been running the business alongside me. She comes out of ILM 16 years as the general manager and then transitioned into being the general manager for Lucasfilm. She has been my key financial partner, my business partner running the company. Dave is the perfect person to transition, but he hadn't made a movie, and I worked very closely with him beginning with Rogue One to get him a feel on how live action works. His background is in animation, as he worked with George on Clone Wars. She also talked a little bit about using AI. She said, I'm interested in exploring using those tools in responsible ways and working out the complications around trying to figure out what we're going to do in terms of protecting artists' rights. That is vitally important, but at the same time, there's nothing more exciting than having new tools that can expand on what you're capable of doing in terms of creating visual language around stories. It is somewhat comparable to when we did Jurassic Park because it was a collision of innovation that George was doing already in terms of sound and picture and editing and all the areas of digital innovation that he really spearheaded. It's true. The thing is with AI, you get people that are very against it because it takes away jobs from artists. But technically, CGI also did that, right? I mean, you're replacing practical effects that are created by artists, and then using different artists to render them digitally in a way that the person who was doing the practical effects can't do. So you're transitioning jobs more than eliminating them, but you're still creating less work for artists who specialize in certain forms of artwork, right? So there are always going to be those arguments. Which, speaking of that, we Cher and I talked a while back about the AI actress, the Tilly Norwood or whatever her name is, stuff, and kind of like, everybody's kind of against it and this, and then the creator of this quote unquote actress came out and talked about it and all this shit. And it's funny because Chris Pratt kind of came out and he was like, why is everyone worried about this AI actress? Like, it's not real. Like, I've never seen or heard of a film that she's even been in. Like, people are just mad about nothing, which you can understand partially that, but you can also understand people that are actually concerned that, like, yeah, she hasn't been in any major motion picture that's, worldwide or whatever. But I think people are afraid of what it represents and what it can lead to, which is, in the future, AI actually replacing in blockbuster films major actors and actresses, which I don't see happening really anytime soon. It absolutely could happen over the long term, but in the short term, it's difficult to see it happening because even though I don't look at celebrity as anything special, I don't go see a movie because of the actors in it. I don't get excited about the castings of things because I don't really care. But the majority of people do, right? Like the majority of people do care about, they go see things because Leonardo DiCaprio's in it or Brad Pitt or whoever, right? Like people are still fascinated and and idolize celebrity, which I don't get and I don't do. But when so many people do, of course, nobody's gonna go see this movie with somebody they never heard of, right? Like that's an AI actress, right? To me, it's people do get ahead of it a little bit, so I get where Chris Pratt comes from on that, but there are a lot of people that are genuinely concerned about where things can lead to. Kathleen Kennedy also spoke about Starfighter, the upcoming Star Wars movie. She said it was envisioned as a single film. Sean Levy just made the experience so pleasant for everybody, and we found this 14-year-old kid out of Ireland who had virtually no experience. That's always risky. Hanging a story so much on a child actor, you're not exactly sure how comfortable they're going to be. Flynn Gray turned out to be such a special kid. Not only was he there with Ryan Gosling, this movie is structured in a way that he had kind of a new actor coming in every few weeks that he was one-on-one with. Matt Smith, Amy Adams, Aaron Pierre. So, I mean, quite a cast already. I love Matt Smith from his work in Doctor Who, obviously, and I think he's very versatile. So, they asked Kathleen Kennedy on any regrets that she had, and she said she doesn't have any regrets. She said, well, maybe a bit of regret about Solo, a Star Wars story. I brought Larry Kasdan in on, and we were so excited about that idea. And then when you're into something and you realize fundamentally, conceptually, you cannot replace Han Solo, at least right now. As wonderful as Alden Ehrenreich was, and he was really good and is a wonderful actor, we put him in an impossible situation. And once you're in it, and once you're committed, you got to carry on. This is where we can say, right? I think a lot of people are happy that Kathleen Kennedy is leaving, and a lot of people blame her for so much of what's gone wrong with Star Wars under Disney, and part of that blame is well founded, and part of it's people just wanting to be mad about things. The reality is, this is a fundamental misunderstanding of why Solo failed. It's not that people weren't ready for Han Solo to be replaced. Like, I don't see that at all. What happened was, you have to put these things in context of when they came out. Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, came out in December of 2017. Solo, a Star Wars story, came out in May of 2018. Think about this clearly. One of the most divisive, hated Star Wars films ever made comes out where Luke is gone, right? And the previous one, Han, is gone. People really disliked The Last Jedi. Not initially, right? There were a lot of people who really liked it when it first came out, and there were a lot of people that over time started to dislike it. And now there's, it's pretty split, but it's very divisive, right? Like the hate for that film and the reaction of fans to then 5 months later release Solo, a Star Wars story, which again nobody expected to come out in May, because right, we have think about this sequentially. 2015 December, The Force Awakens. 2016 December, Rogue One. 2017 December, The Last Jedi. 2018 May, Solo. Right? Everybody kind of expected it to be released in December, to the fact where, when I remember at the time, I was doing Nerdy Boys Reviews podcast with my good buddy Scott, and we talked about, I remember we were like, doesn't that come out in December? And we had to look it up. This was like in February or something. We're like, shit, that movie comes out in May. and it's coming off the back of people just being mad about The Last Jedi. And people, like, this is when The Last Jedi was really when people started, accusing Star Wars of going woke and all this stuff. And then all the news was coming out about, the feminist robot in Solo and all this shit. And so people just didn't go see it. People were getting tired of Star Wars. You could say that, fatigue or oversaturated or whatever it was. You didn't give anybody enough time to really recover and forget about The Last Jedi before you put this movie out. And I think there's very good reason to believe that is what caused the film to not do well. I don't think it's that people weren't ready for Han Solo to be replaced. Like, why are people not upset about Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian? Some people were, to be honest. But, the majority of people weren't. Like, when Luke Skywalker showed up at the end of Season 2 of The Mandalorian, nobody's, like, losing their minds. And that's only a couple years after this. So, when I say losing their mind, I mean in a bad way. People were losing their minds in a good way. Some people were mad about it, right? Like, but it's not this. And the reaction from fans wasn't, we shouldn't be replacing Han Solo with this young kid, right? Like, some people were excited about that prospect, but there was no, like, as far as I saw on social media, massive backlash about replacing Han Solo so soon. It's really that people were just kind of over Star Wars. And even now, people look back on Solo as a fun film, or, people look on it more fondly than they did 4 or 5 years ago because, the sequel trilogy was just such a mess. So I don't agree with her at all on that. Kathleen Kennedy also talked about E.T. Being one of her first producing credits. She said, in the context of what we think about today, that was a $10 million movie. It was a little movie. Today, that would be considered very much an independent film. And then it just took off. In a time when we used to have celebrations a year into release, theater owners wanted to have a cake and a big celebration because the movie had run for a year. And those days are, needless to say, long gone. E.T. was the little engine that could. It didn't open huge. It just stayed consistent and steady and just went on to be one of the biggest movies of all time. There's a bunch more that Chair and I can talk about together. But those are just some of the big quotes from Kathleen Kennedy's exit interview. Now transitioning to this Netflix, Warner Brothers, etc., Paramount thing. First of all, Ted Sarandos, who is the CEO of Netflix, he has reiterated their plan to keep 45-day theatrical windows, if they successfully purchase Warner Brothers. But apparently, Donald Trump shared an article saying to stop the Netflix deal for Warner Brothers. And so Ted Sarandos says, I don't want to overread it. And when he's talking about this thing. So as Ted Sarandos plots what may be a marathon, not a sprint, for Netflix to eventually buy Warner Brothers in what may be a $83 billion plus mega deal, he also needs to keep in mind an audience of one throughout the process. Donald Trump. The mogul made an unannounced visit to the White House on November 24th, days before Netflix's offer to buy the studio side of Warner Brothers was revealed as the winning bid by the David Zaslav-run conglomerate in early December. And Sarandos has been studied in his answers on how Trump sees the deal, and the president likewise had some kind words for the Netflix co-chief. He said, Ted is a fantastic man. I have a lot of respect for him. He said this on December 7th, right before hosting the Kennedy Center Honors, before adding a hedge, but it's a lot of market share, so we'll have to see what happens. Classic Trump. Of late, there's been some chatter about a posted without comment item that Trump made on his media platform Truth Social on January 11th of an article titled Stop the Netflix Cultural Takeover, published by the conservative One America News Network. The piece by John Pierce, an attorney that once represented Kyle Rittenhouse, Rudy Giuliani, and 20 January 6th Capitol riot defenders, describes Netflix as the worker ideologically preferred buyer. compared to Paramount owner David Ellison and his $255 billion net worth father, Larry Ellison, both of whom have been viewed as closer with the Trump administration. Sarandos's take, try not to read too much into it. During an interview with the New York Times, timed to the closing of a deal for Netflix to build a new production base at the former Fort Monmouth site in New Jersey, Sarandos shed more light on his interaction with Trump. He said, I've talked to him a couple times since the election and was asked about the latest turn on Truth Social. He said, I don't know why he would have done that. No conversation we ever had was about any of the things that were in that article that he posted. I don't want to overread it either. Sarandos in the interview says Trump sees Hollywood in the context of protecting jobs and protecting the industry. That framing recalls remarks that the president's go-between for the entertainment industry in the White House, producer Stephen Paul, has also offered up. He said, this is Stephen Paul. He said, this is about creating high-paying, skilled jobs all throughout America. Yeah, tariffs, blah, blah, blah. Speaking of managing constituencies, Sarandos was also asked by The Times about Netflix's commitment to the theatrical business. Given that the major movie theater chains have appealed to Congress to stop any deal for Warner Brothers, Sarandos firmly reiterated a plan to keep a 45-day theatrical window in place. He said, I want to win an opening weekend. I want to win box office. The exec also had what may be a memorable line about an emerging Hollywood narrative that neither buyer should be able to lay claim to Warner Brothers, given it reduces the already shrinking list of major legacy studios still standing. He said, what people would like to see is no deal, but that's not possible. There are two outcomes of this deal, and we have a signed deal done. So, yeah. Listen, I don't think the president should be getting involved with all this, but I don't think the president should be getting involved in a lot of things, especially because this is a Republican administration, and Republicans notoriously believe in less government interference. The government should interfere very little or almost not at all in the personal lives of Americans. Yes, this is business as well, but, you know, Republicans still have this firm belief to let markets decide themselves, and you know, a lot of people agree, even people that aren't Republicans, but hey, so it's odd, you know, and that's the thing. This is the thing with this administration as a whole. Like all these traditional beliefs kind of go out the window for people to you know, say and do what they want, to wear their jerseys and support their team and not give a fuck. So whatever. I'm not here to comment on politics. I'm just here to say that, should Netflix purchase Warner Brothers, we would hope that they stay true to their word. They have theatrical releases, because the reality is movie theaters need it, and if we want movie theaters to stick around, which some people do, some people don't, right? I mean, it's kind of ticket prices are getting absurd, concessions are absurd. Like it's a very expensive idea for a normal person to go to a movie, and you know, it's like everything else. You're almost pricing people out of markets these days. I remember I had this conversation with my wife, and, you know, I mentioned it to a few other people because, you know, like lots of big musicians are announcing their tours and things like that. And so, you know, Bruno Mars is coming local to us, and BTS as well. And so, you know, my wife wanted to get into the pre-sales and stuff, so I remember I got into pre-sale for Bruno Mars and, you know, I was in the waiting room, like, when it opened, and then you get into the queue, and there's, like, 76,000 people in the queue, and so midway through, when there's, like, 30,000 people left, everything's, like, limited, there's, like, little update announcements, and then they said, okay, there will be a second show. And so you hop into both queues, and by the time you get in, there's almost no tickets, and the ones that there are like $400, $500, $600, $700. And when I was talking to her, I said, you know, it really dilutes the music going experience. Like, even if you go to those concerts, you're in a crowd full of people who want to go because it's an experience and they want to say they were a part of it, and not necessarily fans of those musicians, right? Like, sure, there will be a bunch of actual fans there, but the majority of the people there are not necessarily fans. They're people that go because they want to be able to tell people they went, to be able to share that. There are a lot of people that are fine going into debt for it, and I'm not one of them. But really, it is the elites who don't even, they're not the ideal fan necessarily, but they're the ones that are paying for it, right? And in basic economics of supply and demand, people will pay those ticket prices so they can charge them, but you're pricing out your actual fans at that point, right? And so, like, for me, I don't really care about big musicians. Again, going back to, I don't idolize celebrity or anything. Like, I don't really care to see Bruno Mars or BTS or any of these musicians, so it doesn't matter to me necessarily. But if I want to be able to take my wife or whatever, I'm not spending $500 a ticket or more, unless it's something really special, and most of the time it's not. Like, I see a lot of musicians that I like, and they play local smaller venues that, tickets are like $25, $50 or whatever, and it's full of people that are there because they love those musicians. Some of them, sell out quickly, but some of them, there are massive metalcore bands that are coming locally to us that are in the past 5 years are some of the biggest ones out there. Like, they've have some of the top albums in metalcore in the last 5 years, and tickets went on sale 2 or 3 months ago. I could go buy tickets right now for $45 each or whatever, and go see them in a couple months, like when they're here. So, like, and I don't like that music because, it's cheaper to go see them, because when certain bands from those genres get bigger, of course they're gonna have play stadiums that are more expensive, but you're not spending $400, $500, $600 to go see them still. Like, Avenged Sevenfold, is one of the bigger ones, right? And Bring Me the Horizon, right, are massive. But if I wanted to go see them, $150 on the most for a ticket versus, multiple hundreds for one ticket to I don't get that. So I think it dilutes that experience. And it's the same thing, maybe potentially the future of movies is, if only the elites can go see those movies, it's more of an experience for them than it is to go see something that they're a fan of. You're not going to get theaters full of fans. You're going to get theaters full of, whatever else. And the thing is, the popular movies are all based on fandoms, right? Like, big IPs, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Marvel, Disney stuff. Like, these are big fandoms. These are people that want to go and be surrounded by people like them. Not me, really. I don't really want to be surrounded by a bunch of people that, certain. but that's the thing, is like, you want a pure experience, but obviously there's a lot of nuance around all that, so I'm just rambling. I did go see Two Towers in theaters with my wife. We saw it last week, which was really cool, because it's been a long time, and as the extended editions, which, good. Obviously, there are certain issues I have with those films now that I didn't before. Not like real issues. Like, I still love them for what they are, but there are little things that bother me just because, you're adding this tension and stuff that doesn't really need to be there. But it's a film, you got to dramatize stuff, and for adaptations, they are fantastic films. So that being said, I saw a lot of people very upset about the kinds of fellas that were in the theaters with them. I didn't experience this because I went to a show that was added later. So when because most of the original times sold out, so they added a bunch of show times closer to the day that they were showing it, and so I went to one that didn't have as many people. But I saw a lot of people on Reddit who, on the Lord of the Rings pages, that were very upset about the smell in the theater, and some of the people. The theaters are horrible in general for etiquette. People are just the worst. They don't give a shit about anybody. They want everybody to look at them, and I'm the biggest fan here, and I'm gonna be loud and obnoxious and not let you enjoy the film and laugh at all the meme moments. It's like, okay. But yeah, if you're gonna go to a public place, deodorant is your friend. This is true of movie theaters, conventions, grocery stores, everywhere you go. Please just, try to be clean a little bit. So yeah. All right. So beyond what Ted Saranda said, we also now have a report, an update on Netflix upgrading their offer to a full cash offer for Warner Brothers Discovery Studios and HBO Max business, a move aimed at thwarting Paramount Skydance's rival takeover campaign. So, if you guys don't remember, we talked about this, but essentially what it was Netflix's offer was like $24 per share or something, and then they were going to add in their shares, like money valued on their shares on top of it, but it wasn't actual cash. They were giving shares of theirs to stakeholders of Warner Brothers, and that the value was still like, even with that, was like $27 a share. And Paramount was like, yo, hey, shareholders, we'll give you $30 per share essentially. And so now Netflix is saying, well, now we're not going to give you $24 plus some of our shares. We're going to straight give you $27.75 full cash value per share. This deal continues to carry a value of $82.7 billion. The companies said, no, fuck off. Sorry, I clicked a button. I didn't mean to click the button. I didn't mean to. What do you mean page not found? That's rude. Well, anyway, they've upgraded. It's still not worth what what Paramount was offering, but yeah. So there's all that. That's about it, really. Like, Paramount's still doing their thing. They're still suing. They're still trying to get, they're still trying to do this hostile takeover shit. So, it is what it is. That's all the news I'm going to cover right now, because I'm going to talk a little bit about The Beauty. And if you haven't watched it or read it or anything, you don't have to leave. You don't have to, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I'm also not going to talk about it in a way where you have to know what I'm talking about. I'm just going to talk about it in the adaptation sort of way and kind of explain a little bit of my disappointment with the adaptation. So, The Beauty is a comic book series from Image Comics, an independent, the biggest independent comic book publisher out there, and it's essentially, right. It's starts with a basic conceptual idea, right? The idea is there's a new sexually transmitted disease, and instead of being like a normal sexually transmitted disease, the side effects, right? The result of this sexually transmitted disease is your fat burns away, your skin gets clear, you start looking, your whole appearance changes essentially. Like, you're still you, and you're still kind of similar looking, but it makes you beautiful in the terms, what society views as beauty. Like, your metabolism gets faster, you heal faster, and there's no real known side effects from it. And that's literally the narration at the start of the very first issue, is this new sexually transmitted disease that makes you beautiful. It's called The Beauty, that later called The Beauty because of how it affects people. And it's one where people would intentionally try to go get it. They want to be beautiful. They want to spread it, and they want to quote unquote catch it, right? Like they want to be beautiful because, hey, who wouldn't, right? If all it does is enhance your life, that's the concept, right? And it's already a good concept, and the adaptation tries to turn that concept into a mystery to keep you engaged. Like, for people, let's be honest, the majority of people watching the show have never read the comic book series, which is fine, and that's the point of an adaptation. You create something kind of new, right? But the way they do it is they're doing it in a way to add mystery and add suspense, and what is this thing, and what is how does this function, right? But you don't have to do that, really. Like, the facade doesn't really matter. The concept is interesting enough on its own to keep people engaged, in my opinion. So what ends up happening, even in the very first issue of the comic book series, is somebody is like on a train and they more or less burn up from the inside out and die. And people are suspecting, and there's this whole like government cover up of it and stuff, but the detectives involved kind of suspect like there's a cover up, and they're like kind of thinking it might be a result of this STD called the beauty. And so that's like the first real arc of the comic book series, is kind of revealing that cover up, working with these guys undercover who are trying to put a cure out there, how the cure affects people, and then it kind of transitions more into like one-off stories that are also interesting on their own, really, but there's a lot more to it. After one episode, like the way they do the spontaneous combustion, like people just fucking explode and shit, it's whatever, like, and the need to drink excessive amounts of water and all this stuff, and like I get you're trying to build around it and create this lore and give the viewer this immediate recognition of something that's happening as it goes on, right, and it affects more people. I just don't think it's necessary. Like, I think, and also it makes people violent in the show. Like, that's to me, that's so unnecessary. Like, it doesn't make them violent in the comics. It's just, they just end up spontaneously, overheating from the inside out. And they also show like one of the transitions in the first episode, and it's like, a big scrotum cocoon that you emerge from, and you're all sticky and all. It's not even how it is. Like, and I get it, like, it's like, oh, beauty is pain, and let's not make it just something that people go out and like don't have to experience any pain to get, like, but I don't really care. Like, it doesn't, that, like, I get you're adding something to it, and like you're creating suspense because people are watching it to have no idea what's going on, and you have to do a little bit of something to show this is what the person looks like now, and now this, look at them. But you can do that in any number of different ways without doing this weird cocoon rebirth, fucking bones regrowing, fucking fat, sweating out, and all this shit. Like, you don't have to do all of that. It's just like you didn't even take the base idea and try to make it interesting. Because really what the show is, again, it could all change down the road, right? Like, obviously, Ashton Kutcher's character has to come in somewhere from what I've seen in the preview. Like, I didn't watch any of the trailers, but I've seen Ashton Kutcher. Like, he seems like a guy trying to sell the beauty, right? Or whatever, like a drug company or some shit, right? But you don't have to do all of that. The show, what it's doing is, you don't have any idea what's going on, right? You start with a fashion model in Paris who just like starts going crazy to drink water, starts murdering people and like whatever, and then she explodes and you don't know what's going on. But here's some detectives, right? Oh, we got Evan Peters, guys, and some lady, and they're detectives and they're investigating what's going on. And oh, by the way, it's not the first person it's happened to. Now we can connect some dots, and now we got this incel simp guy who goes and gets actual plastic surgery before the guy tells him, oh, by the way, we're going to try this other thing now, and you can, some hot girl comes and has sex with him, and then he goes into cocoon mode and shit. Like, you still have no real idea what's going on. Like, nobody knows what's really going on. They do talk about, the detectives like, oh, they have this unknown disease in them that like seems to be a sexually transmitted disease, and who knows, and blah blah blah. It's like, and then they call it like pretty much like a GLP-1 kind of thing mixed with something else and all this shit. And it's like, you can start with the concept. The concept itself is interesting enough to carry the story and carry the interest and get you to where you want to go. You don't need all this mystery around it. And maybe I'm just a cuckoo nutty person, right? Like, because maybe some people will think the complete opposite. There are probably people out there that say, I really like how they tried to make it interesting and dramatized. That's what I say about Aragorn in The Lord of the Rings, right? Like, they changed his character to kind of dramatize it and make it a little more interesting than in the books, because in the books he's very assured, he knows what he wants to do, he knows he's going to do it. He's going along with Frodo because he's already going to Minas Tirith to reclaim his his kingdom, like he's already that person. But in the movies, right, he's unsure, and he's afraid that he might succumb the way that Isildur did, and this and that, right. So I think you can make it work. You can do things that work for adaptation, but if it's already interesting and keeps you wanting to read more or watch more, you don't need to do all this other stuff. Like, I maybe because I read the comics after watching one episode, I have no interest to keep watching it. Like, it doesn't interest me at all. But maybe people who haven't, they are interested. They want to know what's going on. They want to know that, the next things. How does this work? How does this function? The reality is, the way it functions is you get beautiful, and then a while later you die. It takes time, right? Like for this thing, it's like instant. It's like a couple days or months or whatever. Like, whereas in the comic book, it's like it starts happening over time, and then people who all have it start, again, because the government's covering it up. Some of the people who have it, who realize what's going on, start to freak out, and they know it's only a matter of time before it happens to them. And then you have this cure storyline and whatever, and then more like vignettes kind of certain characters who get it and how it changes their life, and how the lives that they live and things like that. That even in this modern world, you could have made interesting. Like, the show is already doing little political commentary things with incels and this and things like that. Mentioning like GOP ones and all these things, right? But there's already something. Oh, and then of course, all the beautiful people become models in the show, which was stupid. What I'm trying to say is is that, like, if you're making those political commentaries for your show, well, why don't you use the ones that were in the comic book series, right? Like, you have your director of the organization with the detectives, who's in a lesbian relationship with a child. You have your vignette of one of your main characters later in the second volume, who is a trans character, and part of their transition is using the beauty to become who they've always been. Like, you have these things already within comic books. Like, there's always bits of that within comic books. So why bother creating something entirely new that doesn't even pay tribute at all to the original, other than you take the concept, don't present the concept, but you use it as a basis to create your own story around. I mean, I get it, but change the name then, or something. Like, it's at that point, it's not even that anymore. It's the base of the idea that then you build something else around, and don't even reveal that idea because it's a point of mystery. Like, the concept of the show is completely, it's not there yet, right? Like, nobody really knows the concept of the show yet. It's just little parts that are playing out that haven't gone anywhere and aren't going anywhere yet. So that's just my thoughts. I'll probably end up watching more to see if it does anything else. Maybe I'll talk about it. I'll be watching the Night of the Seven Kingdoms at some point as well. The first episode came out last week. The next one comes out today. I don't know if I'll start watching it now or if I'll wait until it's all out and then talk about it. Jerry and I will talk about Fallout Season 2 at some point as well. I haven't watched any of that yet, but I know he's been watching it. So, yeah. Lots going on. That's all I got for today. Much love. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe. See you next time. Bye-bye. Yeah, sorry, I have to click the button. It's over there.